The safest period in commercial aviation history is also the most financially devastating one for the airlines flying you through it. Safety regulations have never been stricter. Inspection requirements have never been more expensive. Mandatory hardware upgrades have never been more frequent. And every single one of those costs lands somewhere. The industry hopes you never look closely enough to notice. The meal service that quietly disappeared 3 years ago. The global airline industry is losing tens of billions of dollars annually to the exact regulations that stop planes from falling out of the sky. That is not a complaint. That is the financial reality commercial aviation has never wanted to explain out loud. Until now. Look closely at modern aviation economics, and the numbers become absolutely staggering. A single new safety regulation mandated by the federal government can cost a major airline anywhere from $50 million to well over $1 billion to implement across their fleet. Here is exactly where that money goes, how the regulatory machine operates, and why your summer vacation flight just became significantly more expensive. The safety system operates on 4 massive cost centers. First, aircraft certification and modification. Second, training and personnel requirements. Third, intensive inspection and maintenance protocols. Fourth, the hidden compliance infrastructure keeping everything running legally. Each of these areas represents billions in spending. Let's start with aircraft certification and modifications. This is where airlines face their biggest financial hits. When aviation authorities like the Federal Aviation Administration introduce a new safety requirement, every commercial aircraft in the fleet must be retrofitted to comply. Take the post-9/11 mandate for reinforced cockpit doors. Modifying the domestic fleet cost carriers hundreds of millions in parts, labor, and downtime. But physical barriers are just a fraction of the cost. The airspace modernization mandate for automatic dependent surveillance broadcast forced a massive financial reckoning. The FAA required all commercial aircraft to broadcast precise GPS data to air traffic control. Retrofitting an airliner with ADS-B equipment costs between $100,000 and $200,000 per plane. For an airline with nearly 1,000 aircraft, that is a massive capital expenditure. This single safety mandate was so expensive that major airlines permanently retired older aircraft models, like the McDonnell Douglas MD-80, because retrofitting them made zero economic sense. Then there are unexpected airworthiness directives, or ADs. These are legally binding rules issued by the FAA when a sudden safety threat is identified. A perfect example is the January 2024 Boeing 737 MAX 9 door plug blowout. Within hours, the FAA grounded the entire fleet of MAX 9 aircraft operating in the United States. Alaska Airlines and United Airlines were forced to cancel thousands of flights. Alaska Airlines reported the 3-week grounding cost at least $150 million in lost revenue and operational expenses. The Boeing MAX crisis provides the ultimate case study in regulatory costs. After 2 fatal crashes exposed critical software flaws, aviation authorities enacted a global grounding lasting 20 months. Boeing spent over $20 billion on modifications, testing, and recertification. Airlines operating the MAX lost an estimated $14 billion in grounded aircraft costs, rebooking fees, and lease payments. Every modification requires extensive testing. When forced to upgrade onboard technology, airlines bleed money through out-of-service time. An airplane only makes money when it is in the sky. Let's examine training and personnel requirements, the second massive drain on airline budgets. Every pilot, flight attendant, dispatcher, and maintenance worker must complete exhaustive safety training dictated by federal law. In the United States, commercial pilots must accumulate 1,500 hours of flight time before they can sit in the right seat as a co-pilot for a major airline. This standard is far stricter than the 250 hours required in many other countries, forcing airlines to pay massive premiums to recruit from a restricted talent pool. The training infrastructure itself costs billions to maintain. Airlines operate massive training centers, housing dozens of full-motion flight simulators. These simulators cost between $10 and $20 million each, requiring constant software updates as safety regulations and aircraft avionics evolve. Pilots must complete recurrent training and emergency simulator checks every 6 to 9 months, meaning these expensive machines must run around the clock. Comprehensive emergency response training programs span 4 to 8 weeks. Attendants must demonstrate absolute proficiency in firefighting, managing medical emergencies, handling unruly passengers, and executing rapid evacuations in pitch-black conditions. Training centers simulate everything from smoke-filled cabins to emergency water landings using million-dollar mock-up fuselages. If a flight attendant fails their recurrent annual safety check, they are legally pulled from flying duty until retrained, instantly costing the airline in lost productivity. Maintenance workers face rigorous certification requirements of their own. Aircraft maintenance technicians must complete specialized training and hold specific type ratings for the aircraft they service. A technician certified on a Boeing 777 cannot simply walk over and sign off on repairs for an Airbus A350 without extensive additional schooling. This siloed expertise means airlines must employ vastly larger maintenance teams to cover mixed fleets. This brings us to the third cost center: inspection and maintenance protocols. Commercial aircraft must undergo rigorous inspection cycles, from routine daily checks to complete structural teardowns. A routine line maintenance check requires specialized labor and expensive replacement parts just to clear a plane for its next day of flying. You cannot buy airplane parts at a hardware store. Every single bolt, rivet, and gasket must be aerospace grade, tested, and shipped with an authorized paper trail guaranteeing its structural integrity. Heavy maintenance checks, often called D-checks, are where the real money is spent. Occurring every few years depending on flight hours, these checks involve taking the entire airplane apart down to its bare metal frame. Inspectors use ultrasound and X-ray equipment to check the fuselage for microscopic stress fractures. The process takes weeks, requires highly specialized hangars, and costs between $1 and $3 million per individual aircraft. Finally, there is the massive compliance infrastructure operating behind the scenes. This includes quality assurance departments, regulatory affairs teams, and digital tracking systems, monitoring the exact lifespan of every single serialized component on every aircraft. The FAA recently mandated Safety Management Systems, or SMS, for all commercial operators. This forced airlines to build massive data IT infrastructures capable of collecting, analyzing, and predicting safety risks before they happen. Major airlines employ hundreds of people whose sole job is safety compliance and data analysis, with annual departmental budgets stretching into the hundreds of millions. Furthermore, airlines flying internationally do not just answer to the FAA. They must also satisfy the European Union Aviation Safety Agency. Overlapping safety regulations multiply compliance costs exponentially. The paperwork is staggering. Every maintenance action, pilot training session, and safety modification must be documented, digitized, and retained for years, instantly accessible to government inspectors at a moment's notice. When you combine aircraft modifications, rigorous training, heavy maintenance, and administrative compliance, the total safety bill for a major airline easily exceeds $1 billion annually. Airlines have few options for absorbing these massive expenses. They cannot legally or morally compromise on safety, so they pass the cost directly to consumers. Industry analysis shows that safety regulations, FAA compliance fees, security surcharges, and aviation taxes account for roughly 20 to 25% of the cost of a standard domestic ticket. This financial reality explains a lot about modern air travel. It is why checked bag fees became a permanent standard, why complimentary meals vanished from domestic coach cabins, and why ticket prices remain high even when oil prices drop. Understanding these costs reveals the harsh truth about airline economics. Every safety improvement, no matter how vital for keeping you alive, represents a massive financial burden. The next time you see a higher fare or pay a fee to pick your seat, remember that a significant portion of your money goes directly toward funding the most secure transportation network in human history. It keeps you safe in the skies, even if it is slowly bleeding the airlines dry to do it.